What's up everyone, welcome back to another video. This is Travis here. Today we're going to be looking at my first client build video. Now I've done several builds, I just never really got around to taking pictures and putting something together like this for you guys to see. But I kind of want to start changing that now because the Reef Tank for Veterans is going to be starting in the beginning of the year, which will be going around and building reef tanks for disabled veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. So you guys will see all those builds. This is just going to be one of probably a couple that you'll see before the end of the year. So for this video, we're going to go ahead and check out Jeff's 150-gallon in-wall reef tank. Now, this system's been up and running officially 2 months now, and he already has SPS growing as well as coralline algae growing on the bottom glass. So you really couldn't ask for a better setup, and I'm really happy to share it with you guys. So let's go and get started. Now, the tank is just a basic 150-gallon that we picked up at That Fish Place in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is actually a pretty popular fish store here. And it's just a basic 150. It's non-drilled, and it's only tempered on the bottom glass. Now, once we got the tank back to the house, I went ahead and drilled for the Synergy Reef Ghost Overflow, and then I went ahead and put also 3/4 inch holes for the bulkheads for the return lines. Now, once that was done, I went ahead and painted the back, sides, and bottom with my usual black, flat black Rust-Oleum oil-based paint, which I use on all my tanks that you guys have seen in pretty much all my videos. And then we just let it dry for a little while. Now, once the tank, while the tank was drying, better yet, we went ahead and worked on the sump. Now, it's a 75-gallon tank, which was actually going to be Jeff's original display tank, but I talked him into getting the bigger one because we might as well go big, because you're just going to want to upgrade later on. And he agreed, so instead of wasting this tank or bringing it back, we decided to turn it into our sump. Now, I went ahead and designed it with 1/2-inch acrylic that I picked up locally, cut it to size. We're going to have a refugium in the first section, the skimmer section in the second, as well as the third section, which will be for the return pump. Now, when it comes to the equipment, we're going to be using a jebao DC 9000 return pump, a bubble magus curve 9 protein skimmer, the brand new Apex with all 4 probes, as well as 2 Eheim 300-watt heaters. Now, once we had the tank and sump in place, it was time to go ahead and start plumbing. Now, my whole plumbing theme is built around upgrading or adding more equipment. That means I went ahead and added 3 additional ball valves to the manifold. That way he can always add more equipment, which we ended up doing later on. I was actually within the first couple weeks, we decided to add a frag tank, which you guys will see here in a minute. But that leaves 2 more ball valves that he can add whatever reactor he wants or any kind of changes that he wants to make with the system. He can do that without having to take all the PVC apart. Now, with that being said, I did add a 4th T on the end there, which actually connects to the dual reactor, which then just drains back down into the sump. Now, when it comes to the return lines, I had to work around these 3 1.5-inch overflow pipes, which are just monstrous. And we actually had to figure out a way so you could still work on the tank without hitting the return line. So I figured we'll go ahead and drill through the stand, go underneath, and then drill back up to be able to get to the left-hand side. It actually worked out well. It's not in the way. You don't have to worry about bumping into it. And I'm actually really happy the way that turned out. Now, I'll be completely honest with you, the hardest part of this build was plumbing that overflow box. There wasn't a lot of room, plus we had to get 3 1.5-inch pipes all the way over to the right-hand side of the room and into the sump. Now, with that being said, I went ahead and made a wooden stand that actually hugs the back of this tank, and it supports all 3 of those white pipes. Now, those will come down, wrap around the tank one more time before dropping into the sump, and it actually worked out really, really well. There's nothing in the way, you don't even bump into it, and I'm really happy with the performance. Now, once we had the basic plumbing done, we went ahead and filled up the tank with tap water. Now, we double checked for any kind of leaks. It was good to go. And then at that point, we added the salt to get it up to 1.025. And that was pretty much it for that day. Now, my overall plan was to come back a few days later with a cycled marine pure block out of my frag tank, as well as about 20 pounds of 4-week-old cured Pucani and some live sand. So that pretty much would jumpstart the biological filtration for the system, and it actually turned out well. The rest of the rock was added about 3 weeks later after it finished curing, and I got the nutrient levels completely down. But with the little bit that we added, as well as the live sand and the marine pure block, the beneficial bacteria was on par early on in this build. Now, I do want to mention that we also turned on the Bubble Magus Curve 9 protein skimmer just for the sake of starting the break-in process on that while the tank is cycling. Now, these skimmers usually take about 3 weeks from past experience to pretty much start pulling out some skimmate, but this one didn't take that long at all. Once it started lowering the bubble level within the skimmer, we went ahead and put the cup back on, and it started pulling out skimmate pretty much immediately. Okay, now that we started the cycling process on the reef tank, let's go ahead and move over to the RODI mixing station. Now, I wanted to design something so that Jeff wouldn't have to physically move any water. Basically, at this point, all he has to do is turn a couple ball valves, and he can not only transfer water from the storage barrel to his mixing barrel, but he can also send that freshly mixed salt water to his reef tank, as well as top off his ATO from the storage barrel. Now, I know that might sound complicated, but it's actually not that bad. If you want more info on how this whole system works, please check out my RODI mixing station on my fish room build series. It's the exact same setup. The only difference is I haven't ran the hardline piping to the ATOs or the tanks. I'm kind of waiting until my 300 gallon is set up before I decide what direction I'm going to go with that. Now, another cool feature that Jeff has is a floor drain. Now, this is connected to a rain gutter and goes directly outside. Now, this is really awesome when it comes to doing water changes, because basically all he has to do is start a siphon with a hose and then put it directly into that drain. Now, what we did is we calculated how much water he would have to take out, and we marked it on the tank. That way he knows when he puts the designated water in the mixing station, he knows that it's exactly enough to fill the tank back up. So really happy with that setup, and it really makes water changes that much easier. And as you guys know in the hobby, if doing water changes is easy, you're going to keep doing them. You guys might have noticed there's a little bit of room between the sump and the RODI mixing station. There's actually just enough room to go ahead and add a frag tank. Yes, we're going to go ahead and put a frag tank back here, because why not, right? Now, Jeff wants to get to the point where he can sell coral to sustain the hobby. That's pretty much where we all want to be. Basically a hobby that supports itself. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and add the frag tank from some of my original videos, like the closet fish room videos, the clear acrylic tank that I had. Now, that's been sitting in my closet for several months now, just because I upgraded to the 200 gallon. But it's great. It still looks awesome. It functioned perfectly. So I went ahead and we got a wooden stand for it, put it in place, and then plumbed it to the manifold. Basically just cut off the end cap to one of the manifold ball valves, connected it to the input of this frag tank, and then just took the drain and had it run into the skimmer section of the sump. Really easy setup, and then it pretty much gives Jeff up to 400 frag slots for whenever he's ready to start doing that. So with all this talk of coral and frag tanks, let's go ahead and move into what lights I'm going to be using over the main display and the frag tank. Now, you guys can see here that I'm working on some SP Reef lights. Basically, I'm just wiring them so I can connect them directly to the apex, and I can control them that way. Now, while I'm doing that, let's go and talk about what other lights I have over the reef tank. Now, you guys might have noticed there are T5 bulbs over there. It's actually a retrofit kit with 2 Coral Plus bulbs. Now, that's pretty much all I'm going to use for T5, just because we don't have a ton of room up there, and it does give the T5 power, or basically color, that I'm looking for from them, as well as giving me enough room to hang 3 SP Reef lights in that little area there. It worked out great. Right now, his percentages are about 40% white and 60% blue, and we did start a lot lower than that as the tank started up, but now that we got some SPS in there, we're kind of bringing up the par level to get some better growth. In regards to the frag tank, I'm just going to go ahead and connect 1 SP Reef light, again putting it on the apex for controllability purposes. Alright, now that you guys have pretty much seen the complete setup, let's go and move on to the rock and the fish. Now, when it comes to the rock, there's about 150 pounds of dry Pucani that I picked up from bulkreefsupply.com, the exact same place I picked up the 200 pounds for my 300 gallon build. Now, I'm curing it in the exact same way. I'm going to go ahead and put it in a 55 gallon barrel, add some salt water, a little bit of beneficial bacteria from a live piece of rock from my frag tank, and start that whole process. Now, I did mention earlier that I took out 20 pounds about 4 weeks into the whole curing process and added that early. Now, I did that because I have the marine pure block that I took out of the frag tank that is full of beneficial bacteria, as well as 2 bags of live sand that I added to the sump. So adding that 20 pounds wasn't a big deal. Basically, the nutrient levels were already coming down in the curing rock barrel, so it was definitely safe to go ahead and add that 20 pounds without any issues. Now, I did let the rest of the rock cure for about another 3 weeks before adding it to the main display. Now, when it comes to algae, the only problem we ever had was a diatom bloom that lasted about 24 hours. Other than that, there hasn't been a speck of algae in this tank. There's really no need for a cleanup crew, but we do have one in there just for the sake of keeping the bottom glass clean and just kind of moving any of the detritus around. But other than that, guys, the tank is so freaking stable. And I'm so surprised on how quickly it is developing. The fact that he's got SPS growth and polyp extension and coralline algae on the bottom glass after 2 months just goes to show that the system is mature and ready to go, and all we got to do at this point is add fish and add more coral. Now, speaking of fish, you guys can see here I have a quarantine set up. I went ahead and started this process about 5 weeks or so before we plan on adding them to the tank. Of course, running copper and just making sure that the fish were good to go. Now, you guys did notice there was a couple pieces of live rock. That was just old rock that I was going to throw out from the original 125 gallons. So what I did is to jumpstart the quarantine system, I simply threw in a couple pieces of live rock as well as my sponge filter. And then once I added the copper, you know, of course, that rock was no good, so I just threw it in the garbage garbage when I was done with the whole process. Well guys, that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Now I will be doing an update on the system in a couple months once we add the new fish and coral. Now speaking of fish, I went ahead and I just put 9 more in quarantine today, as well as the snowflake eel. Now they're going to be in there for about 4 to 5 weeks as long as everything goes smoothly, and then we'll be adding them to Jeff's tank. Now speaking of the quarantine system, I know that I have not shown you guys that build yet. I want to do that. I'm just behind schedule, really behind schedule, and it sucks. I wish there was 2 or 3 of me so I can get everything done. I would love to get a video out every day for you guys, but that's just not realistic right now. So I'm hoping that will change, and we'll see how it goes. One more thing that I want to mention before I let you go is if you are looking for help with setting up a tank or designing a system, or if you have an issue you just can't figure out, please contact me. You can get me at fishofhex.com or fishofhex@gmail.com. We can set something up. We can sit down and figure this out. I do a lot of Skype calls. That's kind of my biggest thing right now. My hourly rate is like 1/3 the industry standard right now, so you're getting a lot of help for almost nothing. Now you can contact me directly for pricing and all that kind of stuff if you want, but I actually have been doing some builds over Skype, which is a new thing for me, and I kind of enjoy it, guiding the person on the other end with drilling the tank, plumbing, and setting up all the filtration without actually having to be there. So if you're outside Pennsylvania and you need some help, just let me know and we can set something up. Now, if you're inside Pennsylvania and you want me to personally come there and help you build it, we can do that as well. Again, just contact me and we can set all that up. Well, guys, I am done rambling. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, put it in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time. Peace.